I'd like to call the meeting to order and ask you to rise. And we have some guests tonight, so if Charlie would come down and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Charlie, what troop are you from? Come on down in front here and face the flag and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, if you will. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well done. Thank you. Good job. Thank you. The Scouts are here in part of earning their citizenship and community merit badge. And they're going to be sitting down and listening to the meeting. They will probably take some copious notes, and afterwards they discuss what they saw, what they learned, and what they heard in furtherance of that merit badge. So welcome. Thank you for being here. Clerk, if you call the roll and read the announcement.
February 28, 2017. Please be advised, this meeting is being taped for video and audio broadcast. Assisted listening devices are available.
We're going to need the sign-in sheet.
Thank you. Mr. Bonifant.
Here.
Mr. Corsello.
Here.
Mr. Hempstead.
Here.
Mr. Kimmel.
Here.
Mr. Sachinelli.
Here.
Ms. Melendez.
Here.
Mr. Sarasis. Ms. Bowman.
Here.
Mr. Sims.
Present.
Mr. Kides.
Here.
Ms. Maggio.
Present.
Mr. De Palma.
Here.
Ms. O'Toole Durko.
Here.
Mr. Igneri.
Here.
Mr. Livingston.
Here.
14 present, 1 absent.
We have a quorum. First item on the agenda, acceptance of the minutes. We have the regular meeting of January 24th, 2017. Ms. Melendez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to make a motion to rescind the approval of the January 24th meeting minutes.
Ms. O'Toole, Ms. Melendez has made a motion to rescind the approval of January 24th, 2017 minutes. Did you wish to discuss that?
I'm just making this motion so that we can correct a typo in the minutes that we didn't notice the last time. That's preventing an ordinance change. It's just can't be fixed. The ordinance cannot be changed until the minutes reflect what we voted on.
Okay, so the first item is a motion to rescind the approval of the minutes of January 24th, 2017. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carries.
Okay.
Ms. Melendez, did you now wish to make?
So I'd like to make a motion to, or I'd like to change the minutes on page 5 for the January 24th meeting. The item that starts with the line 9 should read as follows. It should read, if it is determined that no police officers are necessary, or if the police department is unable to provide sufficient police officers, the director shall, in the alternative, determine the appropriate number of traffic control persons necessary to ensure the public safety. Oh, and the ensure should be with an I. Those are the only changes to the minutes.
Any further discussion? All in favor of the minutes as amended by Councilwoman Melendez? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of February 14th, 2017. Do I have a motion? Mr. Sims moves. Any corrections, deletions, or additions? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion carries. All opposed? Abstains? Mr. Hempstead abstains.
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
Oh, you approve.
I'm in favor, sorry. I'm too used to saying aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is public participation.
Deborah Goldstein.
Thank you. I'm here to address agenda item 7B2, the budget cap. I did want to observe that excluding the Boy Scouts, there appears to be more staff in the room than there are members of the public, and given that you're setting the cap, I don't know if that's terrifying or really, really good news. That having been said, looking at the budget schedule in the attachment, I note that there is not a really large bump to the planning and zoning category. And I would think that that funding is insufficient to carry out the kind of comprehensive plan of conservation and development process we went through in 2008. I'm here once again to plead with the Common Council members to consider moving towards outcome-based budgeting. And I am harping on the POCD and investing in that significant process this upcoming cycle because it can do double duty. The beginning of the outcome-based budgeting process requires that you go out to the community and get significant input from all the areas of the city about what we want to be. And then you start prioritizing things to put into the budget. And it will be a tremendous loss of opportunity if we do not invest in the POCD process, because it can do the heavy lifting in moving over to the outcome-based budgeting process. You will have invested in one process that will be able to serve both outcomes. So I strongly encourage you, as you go through the next process, that the BET consider giving more funding to the POCD process in the upcoming cycle so that we can do it the kind of justice we did 10 years ago. And then you will already be on your way to outcome-based budgeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Goldstein. There's no other person signed to address the Common Council. Is there anybody that would like to address the council at this time? You come forward and state your name and address for the record.
My name is Joanna Cooper, and I just want to thank you all for the efforts that you've been making on behalf of supporting the Board of Education budgets. Thank you.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is resignations and appointments. Mr. Sachinelli, under appointments.
Yes, I'd like to move Mr. Raymond Burney as the Director of Personnel and Labor Relations, and I'd like to speak to it. He has a fairly extensive background in administration and labor relations. I think we'd be lucky to have him as part of the City of Norwalk staff as the Director of Personnel, and he's here for any questions that you might have. Mr. Burney, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. My name is Ray Burney. I am looking forward to coming to work for the mayor and for the City of Norwalk. We lived here for 10 years back in the 90s. We like living in the town. I'm looking forward to moving back, and I'm looking forward to taking on the challenges that the mayor and his staff described to me in the interview process. I'm an attorney. I have 35 years of experience in railroad and airline and public sector, labor relations, human resources, and a few other disciplines. And this opportunity looked like one that I would really like, would really challenge me, and would meet my own personal needs and also satisfy my continued interest to work as a public servant.
Thank you, Mr. Burney. Any further discussion? I want to welcome Mr. Burney. I anticipate the approval. You know, we went on a widespread nationwide search looking for a director of human resource management. And the first go around, we received applications from all over the country. And actually, I think there was one from Hawaii, if I'm not mistaken, which is still part of the country, but not the contiguous 48 states. But when we went through the interview process, we really dug deep and tried to find out that we tried to get the best person we could. We weren't really satisfied with the results of the first search, so we went out again. And we narrowed, and again, we got lots of interest, and we narrowed it down to 3 finalists, and Mr. Burney was among them. And he, according to the interview staff, and I interviewed him afterwards, was head and shoulders above the rest. So I think we're bringing aboard a very talented, experienced person who can rise to the challenge. He'll be working with Mr. Hibson for the first couple of weeks, perhaps, to try to get up to speed on things. But I'm very optimistic that he will get up to speed very quickly. because of his wide breadth of experience. So I want to welcome you aboard. And
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
And I will take a vote, all in favor of the appointment of Mr. Raymond Burney as the Director of Human Resource Management. Please signify. Opposed? Abstentions? Mr. Hempstead abstains. Thank you. Welcome aboard.
Thank you very much. I look forward to working with all of you.
So now we move on to Mayor's remarks. For those of you who missed the group discussion we had a short time ago, we just wanted to announce that we have worked with the Board of Education to craft an operating budget that we believe meets the vast majority of their needs and also is still fair and responsible to the taxpayers of the city of Norwalk. The increased amount that we will be providing to them will come from the fund balance, so the tax levy remains the same as that recommended by Mr. Barron. We feel very comfortable that this is the right thing to do, and we feel that the city will still be in a very positive place when it comes to our fund balance and our AAA bond rating. I want to thank all the people that work so diligently, the Finance Committee, the Board of Education, other members here at the table who work so diligently in many, many hours putting together a budget that will help our schools move forward to implement their strategic plan, as well as helping them to close the achievement gap. And we're excited about that. And Dr. Adamowski and the Board of Education agrees with our final assessment and that we are moving forward. With regards to the capital budget, it's still a work in progress. We've made some headway, and we hope to have something firmed up in the next couple of weeks. So thank you all for all the hard work that you've done. Thank you. Now we go on to other comments. This comes from, at the request of Councilman Livingston, and it starts out, do you have an extra bed, couch, air mattress, or a space for 2 students to put sleeping bags? Then we need you. Brian McMahon High is partnering with the City of Norwalk to host the New England Music Festival at Norwalk City Hall on March 16th, 17th, and 18th. But to host this event, we need to house over 400 students. We need volunteers to help host students for 2 nights. If you can help, please contact Brenda Wilcox-Williams at the Board of Education. This is going to be an exciting event for Norwalk. It's going to help showcase Norwalk. We love showing off our community. We love showing people what we're all about. And this is going to be a great event, bringing people in from, I imagine, the tri-state area. And
Actually, all of New England.
All of New England. So that's going to be great. Do you want to add anything to that?
No, I think you've covered it. I think what's remarkable is I think there's something like 430 students are coming to the city. They're all top musicians from their respective high schools in New England. And I think so far the organizers have found places for all but 45 as of today to stay. And they just need to find 45 more beds. So
I think we can
making
probably
great progress.
do that. Okay. Next, March 9th is Fairfield County's Community Foundation Giving Day. This is our region's largest philanthropic event of the year. Since its inception in 2014, over $3 million has been raised for almost 600 local nonprofits. March 9th is set to be another record-breaking year. We hope that everybody will participate, give to your favorite charity. We know that the way things are, that some of these charities and nonprofits are suffering from lack of funding from various sources, so we hope everybody will pitch in. And last but not least, we're proud to announce the 2nd annual St. Patrick's Day Parade on Saturday, March 11th at 11 a.m. The parade will step off at Vets Park, ending of all places at O'Neill's Irish Pub. This year will be bigger and better than ever, and come out and celebrate the wearing of the green. And anybody who knows Ollie O'Neill from O'Neill's, he is the Grand Marshal this year, and well-deserved. He does so much for the community. So many different people have their events there. He always gives a great price, and so it's well-deserved honor. Mr. Igneri.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before getting into the consent calendar, I'd like to suspend the rules to add a motion, and it's a little background information. We, the City of Norwalk, would like to create a Norwalk Innovation District. It would concentrate our efforts in cultivating and creating growth for small businesses. It includes the food and beverage, digital marketing and media arts, technology and technology startups. In order to start the innovation program, we need to, as a city, agree that we are in favor of such a program so that our partner, our outside partner, Northeast Community Innovation Corp, can apply for a grant to help them get started. Ms. Stocker's here for any additional questions, but I'll make the motion to approve supporting the decision by the Northeast Community Innovation Corporation, a CT-based 501c3 nonprofit organization, to apply to the Innovation Places Program Phase 2 implementation grant that would help to create an innovation district in Norwalk. Support for this economic development initiative is consistent with the Norwalk Plan of Conservation.
Mr. Igneri, oh, no, you.
Procedure? I think we need to vote.
Yes,
We need a vote to, now that we know what it is, which is good, we need a two-thirds vote to suspend the rules, and then we will move on the motion.
Suspend the rules to add it to the agenda.
Excuse me?
Suspend the rules to add it to the agenda.
yes.
Yeah, to add it to the agenda under suspension of the rules.
Okay. Make a motion to suspend the rules to add this to the agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Seems to carry. So it is added to the agenda. We'll add it to, we'll add it to the suspension of the rules section at the end, and I will go over it. With that,
You want to explain what the consent calendar is for the business?
no, good thing. For our Boy Scouts and some of our,
I'm sorry, there was a word that was left off at the bottom. It should be the Norwalk Plan of Conservation and Development. 2 words were left off.
we will add that when we make the motion next. Thank you.
Thank you.
For the Boy Scout and some of our other guests, the consent calendar are all the items on our regular agenda that we agreed to say yes to. So rather than going through item by item and having a vote, we put it on the consent calendar. The consent calendar will be voted on at the end, and all those items will be passed. So, and then we'll go back and go into other items, item by item. Did you guys get that? All right.
You test on that.
This third guy in at the back row, can you repeat what I just said? Yeah, all joking aside, thank you. It's sometimes confusing.
He taped it, he knows.
But tonight, the consent calendar will be read by Mr. Saginelli, and next council meeting, Mr. Sims will read the consent calendar. Mr. Saginelli.
Thank you. Item 6A, authorize for discussion Scott and Leslie Schuler versus City of Norwalk. Item 6A2, consent to table back to the legal department. Approve the settlement of outstanding tax claims of the city against the original Grasso Companies LLC, and authorize the mayor to execute the settlement agreement regarding outstanding tax lien and eligibility to bid on public projects. Item 7A3, approve proposed new ordinance re Arts Commission. Item 7B1, resolution appropriating $200,000 for the purpose of parking capacity study. That is the consent calendar.
Going back to committee.
Oh, apologies. For 7B1 is consent to send back to committee.
No.
Yeah.
Parking?
Yeah.
B,
Parking capacity is not parking authority. Oh, okay.
Your finance.
Yes, exactly. Parking- no, Parking's parking, right?
Is that a yes or a no?
My mistake, if possible.
Fatigue of budget negotiations showing up.
It's true.
Is it?
That's it.
okay.
Calling your vote?
Okay. Short, all in favor of the items that, as read, and I've been asked to clarify that item 6A2 is being tabled back to legal. So I just thought it wasn't heard. Is everyone in agreement with that? A show of hands, vote?
With everything, right?
6A2.
All approved.
Mr. President, maybe you should announce that if anyone's here on any of the concerned about any of the items that are on the consent calendar, they may not want to remain if the purpose was simply to address one of those items.
We could do that. Thank you for doing it.
Okay.
All those items on the consent calendar will not be discussed, so if anyone is here for those items, they've been approved. You're welcome to leave and enjoy your evening. With that, I'll turn it back to the mayor.
Thank you,
I hope
Mr.
have more
McNary.
success tonight.
Item 7A1, Ms. Melendez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item 7A1, approve proposed revisions to City Code Chapter 73A, Parking Authority. Move this item.
Ms. Melendez, move the item. Would you like to discuss it, or
I think other members
Mr. Kimmel?
would like to discuss.
First of all, I'd like to commend, well, let me go back. About a year ago, when the Common Council was, when the Finance Committee of the Common Council was presented the Parking Authority's annual budget, we looked at it and we realized that we didn't know too much about what was in it. The budget was rather sparse, yet we were kind of backed into a corner where we found that, well, we better approve it because we were getting close to the new fiscal year. Right around that time, the Parking Authority, as what they're allowed to do, they raised some parking rates at different lots throughout the city, and the Common Council members were kind of caught off guard. We didn't realize that this was going to happen, even though we just approved the budget. The bottom line was, we didn't have a lot, on the council, we didn't have that much information about what was going on in the Parking Authority, yet constituents would call us whenever they had complaints about parking, and we really didn't have the information that we should be able to provide. So we did a couple things. First of all, Mr. Kides and Mr. Hempstead, they added to their already heavy workload by agreeing to work with the Parking Authority closely and attend their meetings, which they have done. So we have council members now involved with the Parking Authority, working with them, providing us with information. And the Parking Authority itself has been sending us much more information that they have in the past, which means we're going to be better able to deal with their budget requests when it comes up in about a month. As to parking fees and the various lots and on the street, what we were concerned with and what this ordinance addresses is, the primary thing it addresses is, well, what happens when they decide, and which perfectly within their rights to do that, they may have to bump up or bump down for whatever reason in mid-year their parking rates at a particular lot or something like that. And because we would get bombarded with questionnaires, we would get bombarded by constituents with questions about it. So what this ordinance does is require the authority to, whenever they need to make some adjustments in their fee structure, to provide the information to the finance director of the city, Bob Barron, who will take that request to both the Board of Estimate and Taxation and the council for final approval. So we know what's going on. That's the main thing. And if we have questions about it, we will deal with it. So there was this huge loophole in the ordinance that we corrected. And when I look back at everything that's happened over the course of the year, I call this has really been an exercise in good government. We identified a problem, we took some steps to solve it, and here we are less than a year later, approving an ordinance, I think, which goes a long way to solving it. So I hope this passes. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Mr. Bonifant?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had a question on something, the other part, the feature of taking out the waypoint. And after speaking with Mr. Hempstead, he actually helped me fill in the missing parts. We're taking out the part of Waypoint Special Services District, which I didn't remember it ever being enacted, and he reminded me that the developer never signed it, so there is no Waypoint Special Services District. So I just want to make that clear, and that's why that's coming out. Thanks, Doug.
Further discussion?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor,
Ms. Melendez?
To Mr. Bonifant's point, I was going to mention that after Mr. Kimmel spoke, that the only reason this is crossed out is because Mr. Hempstead brought it to our attention that it doesn't exist. So
Right.
it was added when the Parking Authority ordinance was created years ago, and since then, the special Waypoint Special Services District was never created. So that's
Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Was that an oppose or abstention,
I'm
Ms.
in.
Baggio?
She's in.
See, you're in, okay.
I was looking at something else I was pretty disappointed.
Carries unanimously. Next item on the agenda, Ms. Melendez, item 7A2.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item 7A2, approve proposed revisions to City Code Chapter 103, Taxation 103-5.
Melendez moved the item. Would you like to discuss?
Mr. Kimmel would like to discuss.
Mr. Kimmel, would you like to discuss?
For those of you who don't understand the process with senior tax relief, and there's no reason why anybody should, most of the work is done at in the Finance Committee, and I chair that committee. And once we're done with the work, we have to send it over to Ordinance Committee where the new numbers are plugged in, and then we send it to the full council. So what we have is a rather simple item which fortunately, under Mayor Rilling, we have been addressing every single year, and I hope we continue to address it going forward, make adjustments in senior tax relief every year. What we've done this year is to, and if we have any questions, Michael Stewart, our tax assessor, is in the audience to answer any questions, but this is something we've dealt with every year, so I think you all are pretty much familiar with it. We've changed just briefly, we've changed Tier 1 as tax credit from $1,390 to $1,400 a year. The credit will go up $10, only $10 because we did something else. That was very important. We adjusted the qualifying income for Tier 1 from the current $42,900 to qualify for Tier 1 all the way up to $46,500, and that will allow a minimum of 82 families to now qualify for Tier 1, which means their tax credit will go up from $750 to $1,400, which is, combined with the state credit program, really can help people on fixed income. This is at minimal cost to the city. It's less than $120,000. However, we're going to work to get more people involved in the program as soon as this gets passed. Thanks a lot. Hope you all support it. One thing, we talked a lot about education the last couple months, and Mayor Rilling mentioned it before, but it's important to remind folks, and I've said it before, often you judge communities by how they treat their oldest and their youngest residents, and we're dealing tonight with both our school children providing the best education possible, as well as making sure our seniors, especially those on fixed incomes, can afford to remain in their homes and continue to live in Norwalk. So we're taking care of our youngest and our oldest, and I think it's a good night for Norwalk, and I hope this passes. Thank you.
Further discussion? I would like to also thank Mr. Kimmel, the Finance Committee, the Ordinance Committee, Michael Stewart, Bob Barron. This is an exercise that we all believe in because, as Mr. Kimmel mentioned, we have seniors who have long time ago paid off their mortgage, perhaps living on a fixed income, and their taxes are draining them, making them make choices that we don't want them to have to make. So any senior tax relief that we can give them is always appropriate. And this is the third year in a row that we've done this. We hope to continue this and bring the threshold up constantly so we'll keep up with the times. And again, I want to thank everybody that worked so hard on it. It is indeed a good day for Norwalk, so thank you. All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Carries. Thank you. Mr. Kimmel, item 7B2.
It seems I'm on a roll tonight. Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before I begin on the annual resolution on the operating budget, again, I have to thank those members of the Board of Education and the Common Council who really spent a whole lot of time working in committee, working with the Board of Education, emailing me, emailing other folks, trying to figure out the best way to address the city's overall operating request, as well as the most especially the operating request of the Board of Ed. A number of council members have spent a whole lot of time and have bombarded us with a lot of questions. We've had some frank, good, constructive discussions, and I really value the input and the collective nature of this decision because a number of council members weighed in on their own. They took the time to read the material, they had questions, they went into it, they came to meetings, and so this is how you're supposed to do it, and it looks like we've got a good resolution to a difficult problem. I will read the resolution, but I should first note that the numbers that we have in the resolution before us, what we call the annual cap resolution, reflect the decision of the Finance Committee last Thursday night after the public hearing, where we voted unanimously to add $1 million to the recommendation of our Finance Director. We also made it clear that we would like the $1 million to come out of the city's fund balance and not to add to the taxpayer, to our property tax levy. So it's very important to note that we began this process Thursday, where we added $1 million, and we're going to add a little bit more tonight, without adding to the tax levy. So I will read the resolution as amended, as approved last Thursday night. Resolution, whereas Section 1-289 of the Norwalk Charter requires the majority of the Common Council vote to establish specific spending limitation on locally funded expenditures during the process of establishing the next fiscal year's operating budget. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Common Council of the City of Norwalk that the maximum limit on total appropriations for the City of Norwalk for fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2017 shall be no more than $329,667,112. This appropriation cap represents total expenditures of $348,908,852, less estimated intergovernmental grants of $19,241,740. Be it further resolved that the result of this vote and resolution, together with the attached 2017-18 budget guide, be forwarded by the clerk of the City of Norwalk to the Board of Estimate and Taxation. That's the resolution, and Mr. Mayor, I would like to offer an amendment.
Yes, Mr. Kimmel.
Okay. I'd like to move that we amend the resolution that I just read so that total appropriations, or what we call the spending cap, which now reads $329,367,112, be increased by $300,000 to $329,967,112. Again, this is an increase of $300,000. And of course, we would have to adjust the total expenditures up by the same amount. So it would go from $348,908,852 to $349,208,852. Again, I have to point out that we are recommending that this additional $300,000 come from the city's fund balance, and that it be directed to the Board of Education. Thus, it will have no impact on the overall tax levy. I can't stress enough that the action of the Finance Committee on Thursday night to move the proposal to move $1 million out of the fund balance, and the effort tonight to move $300,000 out of the fund balance will have no impact on the tax levy, and we want it to be directed towards the Board of Education.
So the first discussion will be on the resolution as amended by Mr. Kimmel. Any further discussion on that? Ms. Bowman?
Yes. Are we, this is for you, are we within your recommendations for drawing down from our fund balance or rainy day fund at 1.3 million?
The recommendation is, that was required of me by city code to be delivered to you in the first week of February, I think it was, February 13th, second week of February, had a drawdown of fund balance of $2 million. So this represents an additional 1.3 million, or a total of $3.3 million. I think I said it at the Finance Committee, but I'll say it again for everybody's benefit, is the drawdown between 2 million and 3.3 million, I don't think is a hurdle that is going to, or an action that's going to jeopardize our fund balance in the year. It will drop the unassigned fund balance as a percentage of GAAP revenues. That's the part of the fund balance policy of the city, where we target the median level for all AAA rated communities. I think I told you at the conclusion of last fiscal year, all audits were published at the end of December. By the middle of January, I calculated that median at 12.2%. So the middle fund balance percentage for all AAA rated communities in the state of Connecticut is 12.2%. At the end of last year, we were at 13.3%, so we were above the median. However, in this current year, we anticipate spending $2 million, and next fiscal year, I had recommended taking an additional $2 million, and that would have brought us down to the 12.2% median. So that's what kind of gauged my recommendation. So now, for next year, this recommendation is saying not 2 million, but 3.3 million. It drops us to about 11.8% at the end of next year, which is below the median, but I do not think it's a significant enough of a departure to have a credit impact for us in the next year. My biggest concern, which I've told many of you, is the next year. If we increase our budget by about 10 million every year, and knowing that we can't continually draw down on fund balance, at some point we're going to have to stop drawing on fund balance. And so if we stopped in the next year, not only do we have to raise the $10 million, that's the normal growth, but we have to raise the $2 million in my recommendation, or now the proposal, $3.3 million. So now we have to raise $13.3 million in the next year. So the rating agencies understand that we're going to be a little above or a little below the median. They're looking for significant departures from the median before they give us cautionary language or a negative outlook, or ultimately changing our rating. I do not believe that this action that's being proposed tonight will have an impact on our rating next year. But I do ask that everybody be aware in the subsequent year, if we continue to draw on fund balance and we don't have a plan to replenish it to our target of the median, that it can become an issue in the subsequent year. So that's my only caution. The resolution does not give me pause for the upcoming year. It's the subsequent year that I think will become a challenge.
Thank you. And I just want to go ahead and make my discussion comments right now. We've heard our finance director give us cautions. We do want to be very cautious about what we do. I don't want to see the city take a habit of not listening to the professionals that we hire. And I am going to talk about the Fix It First right now, because that funding actually comes from our debt service, which is in our operating budget. Our finance director has told us that that is going to skyrocket, and I don't even think that includes the 13.3 million that he is referring to. So we do want to take heed going forward. We don't want to get into a situation where we are listening to a Board of Education that has a habit of not listening to our own professionals that we hire. The chair of the Board of Education made a comment where he said that he made a discouraging comment about the NAACP and feeling that they don't know how, they don't know what's best for the African American community. Now, myself and my counterpart have made comments and have voiced our opinion about building a school in South Norwalk that our residents will not even be able to go to, who will still be in the Jefferson School with portables. We don't think that makes sense. So we should actually, this city should take the approach of listening to those who know, such as our finance director, such as individuals who live in the neighborhoods where you're trying to build a school, such as individuals who represent the people who will be going to those schools. I just want to, that's my discussion for both items. It looks like we are in the clear for this year. However, we want to, going forward, we want to make sure we take heed to the things that are being said and stop ignoring the things that we are hearing, and we all know that we are hearing.
Thank you. Further discussion?
This is on the amendment, correct, Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Just on the amendment?
I thought it was the motion
Mr. Porcello.
Yeah, amendment, yes, yeah, okay, I didn't hear.
We've heard that by putting the additional $1.3 million into the recommendation, that it's not going to cost taxpayers any money next year, because that's going to be acquired by dipping into the fund.
Just a little adjustment to that statement. It's not going to cost any more than my recommendation. My recommendation had a growth in our grand list of 1.1% and a growth in the mill rate of 2%. And then together, that was a 3.1% tax levy increase. So, and like I explained last time, in a year that's not a revaluation year, the growth in your taxes is going to be the growth in the mill rate. And so we're saying, I think what this amendment is saying is my mill rate growth is going to stay the same at 2%, whether we do my recommended $2 million draw on fund balance, or whether we do the proposal $3.3 million draw on fund balance, because we're putting the extra $1.3 million in expenses and the extra $1.3 million draw on fund balance, and they wash each other. So no impact on the mill rate, but there is a tax increase, but it's just not going to be greater than what I recommended.
I understand that, but going forward, so now effectively the Board of Education's budget is going to increase 4.5% over the previous year?
That's correct. The long sheet that I handed out, the first column is the current year in gray, and if you go all the way to the far right, you'll see what the plus $1.3 million, that impact is. At the very top, you'll see that the city is unchanged by this proposal. The city's budget will go up about $4 million, $3,950,000, which represents about a 2.5% increase. However, the Board of Ed's budget will go up about $7.9 million, or 4.5%. In total, the budget's going to go up $11,884,000, or 3.5%.
Just to be clear, originally you had recommended that the Board of Ed's budget be increased by 3.8%.
That's right, or 6.6 million, that's right.
And now with the amendment, adding another $1.3 million, it's going to go up by 4.5%.
Or 7.9 million, right.
And it's not going to have an impact, it's not going to increase taxes any more than your original recommendation. And that's as a result of the fact that the money is coming out of
the fund balance.
The rainy day fund.
Right. So I had a recommendation that had 2% mill rate increase, and what we're doing is we're adding $1.3 million to the expense side. The Board of Ed's, we're guessing their appropriation, and then we're taking away $1.3 million from the fund balance, so no net impact. We're adding $1.3 million, subtracting, and then taking in another $1.3 million in revenue, so the mill rate will remain at 2%.
going forward, okay, so now the Board of Ed's operating budget has been increased by 4.5%.
Right, 184 million will be their new total.
And going forward for the following year, if monies don't come out of the rainy day fund again, then that will have an impact on taxes. It'll have to be raised another way.
It will, in as much as the Board of Ed's new base funding level will be 184 million. And so any organic increases they have, the costs for their teacher contracts, I guess is the biggest driver, will have to be on top of the 184 million because we cannot fund at a level less than the prior year. And so to account for not drawing from the fund balance and any organic growth on the Board of Ed side or the city side, the subsequent year will have a larger tax impact, you're right.
So essentially, by dipping into the fund now, we're putting off a likely tax increase in the future.
I think that's a reasonable conclusion, but not always. If we have a particularly big banner year on revenues, if revenues come in greater than anticipated, or if we have a particularly good year in expenses, and we're always really good at this because the BET is the appropriations body of the city, and they look at these numbers every month. But if we have benefits from, we're self-insured on our insurance side, and so if we have benefits from lower cost of insurance, if we don't fill vacancies, that creates surpluses and the like. I think there's an opportunity that it won't be as drastic of a draw in the subsequent year, but then it always can be even a greater draw too if we get hits from reductions in state aid or the revenue that we planned on didn't come in. So I think it's a reasonable conclusion that the second year is going to have a larger tax increase because of the increased use of fund balance in the current year.
Thank you. Further discussion, Mr. Kimmel.
Yeah, just the point, every year we find ourselves when we're discussing the operating budget in an increasingly tighter corner. And a municipality has always got to find a balance between prudent fiscal policies, prudent budget policies on the one hand, and the needs of our schools and students on the other hand. And it's a tough call. We go through this every year, and we will listen to our finance director who looks at it through one set of eyes as a finance director and doing what finance directors do. Very conservative, very prudent, fiscal analysis of where we are, where we might end up, and how careful we need to be. Yet on the other hand, we have, because of the ECS formula, we find ourselves in increasingly dire straits when it comes to providing students a 21st century education. That's all there is to it. And finally, I know, let me put, the Board of Ed has addressed certain issues this year. I think doing it all in 1 year, all of their goals in 1 year, they were asking for a lot. But a lot of these things are long overdue. Whether you're talking about remedial intervention programs for students, you got to have them. You got to find the money to have them. Additional costs at the high school level to reduce study halls, a whole variety of things associated with education. It's really common practice throughout the country, but being stuck the way we are in Stanford, Norwalk, and a few other cities because of these ECS formula, we find ourselves having to make these really terrible, tough decisions. I think in past years, the last few years, we've done a pretty good job. We were able to pretty much fund most of what the Board of Ed asked for, if not everything. At the same time, we really did hold the line on taxes. Here we have a situation where the board is on the brink of implementing a lot of programs that are long overdue, and nothing comes for free in the world of education, as we all know. So I'm willing to bend a little this time around. We found those funds for the Board of Ed. The economy seems to be, in Norwalk, our economy seems to be growing. I think our grand list is going to grow. We'll see what happens in a few years. But if we don't, my feeling is if we don't provide this additional money for these programs, these very specific programs, we'll end up paying for it later. So let's do it now rather than later. I want to emphasize also for anyone who was wondering, 4.5%, I thought the Board had asked for 10.1%. The issue here is the Board of Ed did ask for 10.1%, but again, through discussions with the city, insurance consultants, and everything else, both the city and the Board of Ed, it looks like we're in a good position to make some substantial savings in our insurance accounts by going on to the state system. We understand from the Board of Ed's consultants that there's the possibility of a $5 million savings in the works if they should go on the state system, and the savings for the city may be about $700,000. We should also make clear that the Board of Ed has a net gain, if I remember correctly, of $1.7 million in state aid at this time around. That has to be directed towards special education, which is a good thing, because the more we can rein in the cost of special ed in this city, the better. And those kids certainly deserve it as much as anybody, if not more than anyone else. Plus, Superintendent Adamowski said they realize there are some efficiencies and savings that they can find. So with this additional money and the change in the insurance policy, the net increase in aid from the state, they may be in fact able to implement this year, hopefully in one fell swoop, hopefully, their strategic plan, like I said, which is long overdue. We will know next budget season how much of this plan was implemented, okay? Right now, our fingers are crossed. We know 3.3 drawdown of the fund balance is something I don't think we've ever done. I think one year, many years ago, I think as high as was 4 million. I could be wrong, but I seem to remember that. But we were in dire straits in the midst of a recession, if I remember correctly. So I'm willing to bend a little and see what happens. I think we're in good shape. We have somebody to remind us every day, you know, if we're going a little too far out there in our big spending habits. But remember, we're spending for schools, and that's an important thing. So I would, this time around, let's bend a little. Let's provide the money, and let's hope these students get these services that are long overdue. So I'd like to hope we can support the amendment.
Mr. Igneri.
It's hard to follow that. Thank you, Mr. Kimmel. The one point I wanted to make is Mr. Barron is very conservative in his estimates. And one of the estimates, which he's very conservative in, is the growth of our grand list. And Mr. Kimmel hit upon that. But he has said in some of these meetings that it will be several years before we start to feel all the impact on the grand list of the development that's going on now. And then there's some future development. So I think optimistically I am looking at that grand list growth in the future as helping us out and not having the concern as much as you do. I think I agree as well that we need to support the schools at this point. Little was done over the years. We need to make a change now. Thank you.
Ms. Bowman? Oh, Mr. Sims.
Yeah, I just want to say, yes, we do need to support our schools. Our kids, they certainly do come first. However, for me, going forward, I like to see when we start appropriating a budget for the Board of Ed, that we're thinking more on the lines of really putting money towards the education of our kids. I mean, the school and the infrastructures, yes, they do need some repairs and replacements, but I think the real focus of where the money needs to be going is really educating our kids. So currently, our school system, we're rated number 82nd in the state, and we're rated 4,489 nationwide. And for me, that's almost a telltale that we have almost a failing school system. And if we're gonna really be serious about appropriating that kind of money, and supporting that bottom line, I think we really need to be fiscally responsible and really start thinking ahead and make sure that we have that money going to the right academic programs for our kids, and making sure that the curriculum is exactly what is desirable by our kids and our parents, and not just throwing money to the Board of Ed because they're requesting it, and just to fix up schools, et cetera. But if we're gonna put this kind of money into the Board of Ed's budget, I want to make sure that they're doing everything in their power to make sure that our kids are getting first top of the line education.
Further discussion, Ms. Bowman.
Well, very well said, Councilman Sims. I don't know if you all know, I know you all, a lot of parents came out to speak. I don't know if you all know that half of the budget goes to the central office, not even to the schools. So what we want to see, and what I want to see with this money, I want the Board of Education to come back to me and say, we implemented this program and it did this. I don't want you to come back to me and come back here next year and say, or whoever is here, come back and say, well, yes, you gave us this money and everything is still broken, because that's what it seems like we hear. I want to hear that the high school kids are not in study hall all day. I don't want to hear about 18-year-olds out not doing anything, not going to college, not being able to get a job, and out here doing X, Y, Z out on the street, because all of that reflects on our school system. So if you're getting this money, you're $3.3 million from our rainy day fund. I want the Board of Education, I want to hold you accountable, and I think everybody else does here, for you to come back to us next year and tell us what you did and what went right and what went well. And the parents, you should be able to say something changed in my school. You know, the taxpayers gave us this money, something changed in our school. Because quite frankly, our taxpayers can't afford to continually see increases and not get the benefit back from their schools. I did see a lot of letters, and we saw the letters and the emails from Cranberry and Rowayton. Well, you guys are getting hit the hardest. I mean, South Norwalk, our tax bill is going up about an annual, about $90-something, $300 in Rowayton. If you would have gotten if we would have gave you what the school Board of Ed requested, Rowayton, your tax bill would have been going up about $900 for the year. And probably something similar at Cranberry. We have to think about everyone, and it's time we want to see results, not just from you. If a nonprofit wanted funds, they would have to show their results and prove themselves. For our CDBG grant, our nonprofits have to show results in order to continue to get funding, and especially to come back and ask for more funding. So we want to see the results next year.
Further discussion. Mr. Bonifant.
I really appreciate all the comments that started with Mr. Corsola and worked their way around. And Mr. Barron, thank you for your answers. And you made it real clear. I mean, it's something we knew, but it was nice that you stated it, that if we gave them $184 million this year, that's next year's starting point, because you don't go backwards, right?
That's right.
And also, that's a commitment to drawing down fund balance all the time, or in the subsequent years, we're either gonna have to raise the taxes, or as someone else was hoping for, the grand list be going up. But personally, I don't see grand lists being helped in a net gain. When you're building apartments and the kids go to school, you start to add, you know, to me, there's not really a gain on the grand list when you do that, because you're spending it on the other side to build classes and pay for teachers. But thank you for the straight answers.
Thanks. Further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, all in favor?
On the amendment.
Aye.
So,
Opposed? Abstentions? Ms. Bowman, were you in favor?
Yeah.
Okay, 13 in favor, 1 opposed.
who's the one?
Mr. Sims. Okay, Mr. Kimmel.
Well, we have the amended resolution. Should I just repeat the numbers instead of reading the whole thing, or how would you prefer? I will, well, let me do it quickly. The new numbers are, if I got this right, the maximum limit on total appropriations, I'm just going to read that paragraph, The maximum limit on total appropriations for City of Norwalk fiscal year, shall be no more than, so the new number is $329,967,112. You guys have that? Okay, it's just change one digit, 6 to 9. Next one, we've got to do a little addition. This appropriation cap represents total expenditures of, the new number is $349,208,852, and, guys have it? And the estimated intergovernmental grants, that remains the same, $19,241,740.
So Mr. Kimmel moved on the resolution. Mr. Hempstead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's my 14th operating budget cap. I have to say I'm tired, because I'm tired of the process that doesn't really address the issues at hand. I often, Mr. McClave, I think, said it best about 6 years ago, and trust me, Mr. McClave and I did not certainly see eye to eye on most things, that we have to stop this process of it's them versus us. It's the Board of Ed versus the city. It's been through several mayors. It's not unique to any one particular mayor or one particular way. And the only way I think that we're ever going to get around this is start working toward a process, even like Ms. Goldstein may have mentioned, but a little bit differently, that when money is assigned to a particular effort by either a city department or a Board of Ed department, it needs to be associated with a task, a policy, something that's driving a particular goal. And that goal needs to be a measurable goal. So at the end of the day, as Ms. Bowman suggested, if you're investing $1 million because they want to start a new program, or investing $1 million in a new city function, then at the end of the day, be it the first year or the second year, what have you obtained? What have you gathered? What improvements have you done by assigning that particular dollar amount? Instead, and our function is, by charter, is just to vote for a lump sum. The lump sum usually gets based on what do we think the taxpayers can afford for some kind of increase, because it's never gone the other way in the 14 years I've been on. Until we reach that point, until we assign that, this will be another term from another council to go the them versus us. And it shouldn't be that way, because a good Board of Education, a good education system floats the boat. So does all the other, our city, our streets. Sorry.
Yeah, show that.
All right. But I will also want to add to this, I'm also very glad something has been worked out. It seems to be an amenable kind of workout. But I also say I'm very disappointed, somewhat perplexed. And for a little thing I say a little bit, it's gnawing at me, and I'm going to say it. I've heard too much about supposedly the Common Council, leadership. Let's call it for what it is. It's the leadership of the majority, because the minority has not been to the party. So when you call it for what it is. The leadership of the Democratic Council made the decisions, made the deals. The mayor made the deals. Because the minority part of this council is not part of any of those discussions. Nobody's invited to a breakfast, very quaint. Nobody gets invited to that. Nobody gets invited to any of the closed room door meetings. Yes, the goal has been reached. But again, all 15 of us got elected by a majority of people. Different backgrounds, different expertise, different experience in government, different opinions. But we got chose to elect to represent the electorate. And then when I see comments today that a news agency knows before us that a deal has been struck, not only supposedly for the operating budget, but for the capital budget that hasn't even gone through a committee yet. Why do we bother even inviting the public then in for a public hearing? It's not right. It's just not right. It's like we're sticking our nose up to them saying the deals are done. So I have to say that I supported this going through. I still think to this day there's more money in that fund balance than needs to be. All right, I differ. But I also have concerns because of the stupid way our state has enacted legislation that says you can't have more than a 2.9% increase. They talked about removing it, but it's not removed yet. We have a situation where we can't give the Board of Ed any less any 1 year. If student population dropped by 1,000, you got to give them the same amount of money you gave them the year before. We're being guided by. And as to me personally, as the fix it first guys who came forward from the state, A, mind your own business. B, if you want to fix it first, why don't you start with the ECS? Why don't you start with our funding so we don't have to have these arguments, we don't have to have these discussions, we don't have to have 500 parents have to figure out how to get babysitters so they can come out and talk to us. Let them get their act together, let Norwalk get the money it needs, and let Norwalk council and mayor who got elected by its citizen for the function of figuring out what we need to do with the school to those who are on the local level. If that's what you want to do, then run for local office. But I want to say I am glad that parties came together and accomplished this, because I've been through some pretty testy, I would say, negotiations over there, or lack of negotiations over the years. All right, this did good to me, and my hat's off to that. But I just don't think the process has been inclusionary, and it certainly has been partisan. Thank you.
If I could just make one comment to correct. I understand that there has been a news release that suggests perhaps there's been an agreement on the capital budget. That is not true.
Okay, but there is an agreement.
That's what reported.
I understand.
On the operating. So
That-
I'll just introduce myself. My name is Michelle
Let me just
Matthew.
finish. The operating budget, yes, we've had meetings. The capital budget, still under discussion on various issues. So there has been no firm agreement on the capital budget. Yes, Ms. Gianderco.
Just to echo what Mr. Hempstead said very eloquently, that some of the frustrations that we're feeling. I'm sitting here tonight and I get a breaking news alert from one of our local news sources who's sitting here.
Give her a plug.
Nancy's here, and I get a breaking news alert that everything's done, and there was a press release. There was a press conference and a press release, and we're all sitting here thinking that we're coming to the table to vote on this, but it was already done. So it's disheartening to sit through the meetings, to sit through all those parents who came out last week, and to try to do right by the city, and we get here and it's already a done deal. So for future, it'd be nice to just keep it a surprise until we adjourn the meeting, then go with it. But to come here tonight, it's very frustrating.
Ms. Baggio.
So maybe I wasn't invited to the talks because I'm supposed to be an extremely conservative Republican. But as much as I have the taxpayers' interests at heart, all taxpayers' interests at heart, I also wear two hats. I'm a mom of 3 children that are currently in the Norwalk public school system. And probably wouldn't have given you guys any grief on what you wanted to add to what we were going to take from the rainy day fund. Because I think my first term on the council, and Doug said earlier, Matt McClave, who was very long-winded, but he had a lot of good things to say. We took more money out of the fund balance then to help support the Board of Ed when we had less money in the fund balance. Right now, I believe that we have more money than any of the other state-rated agencies around, right? I'm not 100% sure, but I did hear something like that. So I probably would have made a recommendation to give more money from the rainy day fund towards the Board of Ed, and maybe we could have talked about that. But I wish the Boy Scouts were still here, because they would have learned another lesson, that if you're one of 4 people on a council this large, you're not invited to things if you're not needed. And it is extremely disappointing because, well, District C is lucky because they have me and John Kites, who text messaged me today, but didn't mention anything about the press conference. I thought we were pals.
I didn't know about it till a little while ago.
Okay. I am not doing my constituents any type of service when I can't help them voice their opinions. I can't help the moms that are fighting for their kids in special education if I don't have a chance to tell you how I feel or how the people in my neighborhood feel. Just like how the state is gonna ram through East Avenue and lower the roadway so the trucks can go down, and everybody in East Norwalk's against it, but the state's gonna do it. They don't live here. My opinion doesn't matter, I get it. But the people that voted for me, their opinion matters, and their opinion is gonna matter next time the election comes up. That's it, I don't have anything else to say.
Mr. Kimmel.
For the record, Mr. McClave did not argue to take money out of the fund balance. He, in my opinion, a fiscally reckless approach, and you guys will remember, to take money out of our OPEB fund accounts, and that is something you cannot do, ever, to rate our retirements, our health insurance. That's what he was proposing to do, not to take money from the fund balance. He understood the consequences of doing that. He did not appreciate the importance of maintaining certain levels of our retiree benefits. In fact, he's quoted as saying it was a slush fund. The MBR can go down. There are exceptions to the rule, one of which is if there is a substantial decrease in enrollment, the MBR doesn't apply. The other point about the MBR is many states, including New York, have various versions of MBRs, whether it's 100% you've got to go over, whether it has to be 90% of what it was the previous years, but MBRs are in place around the country. Then, just on a more personal note, I do recall phone conversations, emails, and things like that to keep you in the loop. No, I'm talking to Mr. Hempstead, including a long phone conversation on Friday. At the time, I did not know that we were going to reach an agreement, but the point was, be candid. I offer you my views repeatedly on a variety of issues that pertain to the budget, and I feel that's part of, number one, being a friend and knowing you for many years, number two, being chair of the Finance Committee. You know my views on most any budget issue that comes up, regardless of how much information you're provided and how many meetings that I attend with you or discussions I have with you privately after a meeting, I still have no idea where you stand on things. You never reveal anything until we're here in council chambers. You spend a number of years, a couple years at least, criticizing other caucuses for coming into meetings where the majority has no idea what's going to happen, whether it is attempts at a communication or not. Being included in a loop is not so that you're merely to be provided information. It is to hear opinions and to work out differences and to come to agreements. A number of years ago, Fred Wilms and I, Fred was on his first term in the council, I was on my second term, and we realized that I was in a caucus of 4, and Fred was in a caucus of 11. We both took the train to Manhattan. I think you know the story. And we realized that the two caucuses were not very far apart on the operating budget. I made my feelings known to Fred, where I stood, and it dawns on Fred that we're not that far apart. And we actually took the next train. I took a little later train, so we went to New York together, and in fact, we worked out a compromise. When I was in the minority, I always made my positions clear. Whether I was in the loop or not, I would pick up a phone, I would respond to emails. It wasn't a question of just being provided information and knowing what's going on. It was actually making a contribution and hashing things out. And I think that's a certain dilemma that we have to face. A month or so ago, we talked about seriousness regarding appointments. I believe you know what I'm talking about.
I don't.
Proxies and appointments and things like that, and let's let it go.
So, can I respond?
Ms. Bowman?
Well, I was just going to say, I would hope that the capital budget has not been decided, as someone alluded to, because you're talking about building a school in South Norwalk. South Norwalk has loudly voiced their opinions in regards to this. It's not going to be a neighborhood school. It's going to be a new building for Columbus, who does not even have neighborhood South Norwalk students, in which case it does not make sense. So I don't want to hear 2, 3 down the road other districts complaining because they have to pay more in their taxes because of South Norwalk, when the school, although it will be located in South Norwalk, is not going to be serving South Norwalk kids. So until everyone comes down and talks to the constituents and does not dismiss the constituents and the people who represent South Norwalk, there should not be any decisions being made in regards to building new schools and building them, whether or not it's going to be in South Norwalk. South Norwalk wanted a neighborhood school, and there is no plan in any of the 3 things that they've got planned in their $300 million plan to build a neighborhood school for South Norwalk. So what are we doing here again? And one other thing I wanted to point out, a really important thing I wanted to point out, we are talking about over-enrollment that is largely based on immigration and based on their research that they have done. And social science research, and I'm a quantitative research, we actually throw out research when there is a major social phenom that will skew the numbers and make the numbers irrelevant. And that major phenom is Donald Trump. Therefore, all of the research and all of the over-enrollment projections that you have may not even be relevant come next year. So what are we doing? And until we have these discussions, I hope nobody is making any deals in regards to the capital budget.
Mr. Hempstead, then.
But since I didn't mention any names in my particular discussion, but since I've been brought directly into this, I have a simple question to ask, and nobody has to answer it. So how many meetings were there with the Board of Ed, Adamowski, and the council members? 1, 2, 5, 10? I don't know the number. I know there were several. And how many were any of the 4 of us invited to any one of those meetings? Because part of good discussions and good things, you try and, that's what good committees do. You try and test things out, discuss things, and knowing that at the end of the day, you may not all agree, but you try to come up with a better product. And I don't recall, I've asked here in my group, have you been invited to any of these? And the answer has been no. So that's what I'm talking about. Emails, discussions, personal between you and I don't try and repeat most things. You're right, sometimes I play things close to the vest because I'm still mulling over. I wanted to hear what the public had to say last Thursday at the meeting. I wanted to understand the finances. You and I discussed that on Wednesday night after the meeting. And I often said I thought the 5.2 was what when I asked Adamowski what was the goal I was trying to strive, if they could get the 5.2%, because they said they could live to it. Now there were other methodologies to getting there, and at the end of the day, you got there. Great. But don't say it's in a manner that it's been such a great effort by all, because when Congress or state talks about leadership gets together and comes up with an agreement, that means everybody got together and said, you know, it's a good idea, let's move along with it. We all voted for it. I'm going to vote for this because I think at the end of the day, it's the right thing to do. But it's just a question of how you get there. And I'm going back to, you know, if we're going to go on to things that go back to last week, I don't know why we had a personnel meeting. I really don't. Chair wasn't part of any kind of interviewing process. I know it's a right. How Mr. Mayor Moshe used to say it, I have the right to anoint. You have the right. I have the right to appoint. You have the right to anoint. Okay, and you're absolutely right. But usually there's some kind of pre-discussion with some people that invest their volunteer time. We don't get paid for this. I really don't consider that a pay. That we should at least have a courtesy to be asked to be part of a process, at least the chairperson. So it's just the way I feel. I'm not holding back. Again, like I said, I think this is a good deal, and I'm going to vote for it at the end of the day. And I hope the Board of Education at the end of the day is going to be able to deliver the results that they say they offer off of this, because they're probably going to be looking for more money next year.
Mr. Igneri?
I'm not going to get into names either. Well, maybe a few. But not too long ago, I spent 4 years sitting over there in the minority position. And I felt very much like you, ignored. And some of us resorted to videos to get attention from your side of the floor. That being said, there's an obvious mistake in the way we're doing things, or a flaw in the way we're doing things. And we should sit down together and work through this so it doesn't happen again this year, or in future years, because I don't want to be sitting over there again, not knowing what's happening, and not being in the loop, finding out 3 minutes before the meetings. So we've both made errors, and I apologize for my part of it. I try to communicate with you, and sometimes the phones don't work. So let's sit down and consider a way to move forward on this so that everyone's in the loop.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the resolution, please signify by raising your hand, or you want to? Okay. Yeah, we're voting on it.
We already voted on the amendment.
We voted on the amendment, now we're on the resolution. All right, all opposed? Abstentions?
Did everyone vote?
So, from what I gather, it's 14-0, right? Motion carries. Yes. Okay, who wants to be the one? No? There's more?
Suspension of the rules.
Oh, suspension of the rules, that's right, I'm sorry.
We suspended the rules earlier.
Yes. So, Mr. Igneri.
I will move again and ask
As amended.
Ms. Stocker to come forward to answer any questions. The motion is to approve supporting the decision by Northeast Community Innovation Corp., a CT-based 501c3 nonprofit organization, to apply to the Innovation Places Program, Phase 2 implementation grant that will help create an innovation district in Norwalk. Support for this economic development initiative is consistent with the Norwalk Plan of Conservation and Development. So, that being said,
Are there
any questions?
Any questions on this? Mr. Bonifant?
Yeah, could we just get the short version of what this is?
Sure, come on down,
I
Mr.
mean, is it a
Stockton.
place where they're not going to pay taxes or what? You know, what's an innovation district?
No, an innovation district is basically offering resources to the small businessman. He wants to refinance his business, or he could go to this resource and find out a way to refinance. He wants to innovate. He wants new ways of doing things. He wants to be more efficient. This is going to help them.
Ms. Stocker, did you want to expound upon that?
So the Innovation District is an area in the city where people can go to gather and really network and help each other grow their businesses. So it's a new district that the state has come up with, and the state is funding these projects in the communities. So it's a way to attract talent to our state so that we can grow our workforce and also to create new businesses.
Mr. Sims?
And, I mean, I think this is a great program, but, you know, there's a lot of unanswered questions here in terms of, like, where will the funding come from for this program? How much will it cost? Where will it be located, et cetera? You know, is it going to be located here in City Hall? Is it going to be elsewhere throughout the city?
So this is a privately and collaborated group of folks that include the city as well as private entities throughout the city. And right now, the funding, we're applying for a grant, or this entity is applying for a grant to the state of Connecticut. And so that's where the funding will come from. Otherwise, this is a private endeavor. It's not a city endeavor for funding.
Okay, so just a hypothetical question: what happens if you don't get funded by the state of Connecticut through this grant?
I don't know. Hopefully, some corporations will help donate. It's kind of what I'm thinking.
Okay, and where exactly do you guys have a place that you're thinking of holding the program in?
We don't have real estate location at this point, but the district itself, we're looking at South Norwalk and the Wall Street area. So it'd be the core area of the city, because the focus is on transportation. We have the trains that are there as well as the buses. And it's walkable, it's a mixed-use area. It has the infrastructure that's necessary to accommodate growth, and that's the area that we're looking at.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Livingston.
Yeah, hi, a couple questions. So the idea is to create sort of an incubator space, is that correct?
Yes, I think that's part of it. It's also to help program different activities, different meetups, and events, hackers events, and things like that.
On the second question, how much do you think you might be able to get in this grant? Do you have a range of funds?
You know, we are still in the process of putting the grant together, so I'm not really sure. There's $4.9 million per year for 5 years allocated, and so I believe that the state wants to fund about 5, so it could be substantial.
Now, are you working with any, I know you have a list of private entities and people you're working with, but have you considered one of these like WeWork places where they take care of the space and offer it out to different groups, usually startups?
Yes, there is different, there are different models, and so that could be one of them. And so you know, we're also working with the community college, we're working with the library as two entities as well as private companies. So it can be a combination of those spaces inside those places and its own place.
Thank you.
Ms. Bowman?
So yes, so who is who makes up the Northeast Community Innovation Corporation?
There are 2 principals in the corporation, Barry Schwimmer and Peter Propp.
And so this is their corporation and they are applying for this grant?
That's correct.
And they need our permission to do what?
They are, well, the program requires the legislative body of the city to show proof that that you will support the application, and support it by saying, yes, we support their application. It's kind of an odd thing, but.
What do we do? I mean, do we support them by, do we have to give them?
Letter of support, a letter of support for the application.
We won't be required to give them any city space, will we?
No.
Why, I would want to, now what is the time, I saw that there's a time crunch, but why, I would want to see them here. You know, something that I would want to see is for them to be here to kind of talk to us, because we're not, you represent the city.
Correct.
Right, and they want us to sign on to something. What is the time?
Well, as you know, this came up rather suddenly that we were requesting to put this onto the agenda right away because it's time sensitive, and actually this just came to my attention last week, so it wasn't something that we had planned out. Otherwise, they probably would have been here.
If I may.
Are you finished, Ms. Bowman?
Well, what was, yeah, I was asking, what, do you know the time crunch?
Pardon me?
I think it should go back to committee.
Okay, Mr. Igneri?
We can vet it in,
All we are saying, we're sending a letter to the state saying we are interested in having an innovation development area in Norwalk. We're not, supporting these guys.
well, that, essentially, that's what we're doing. If we sign off on this, we give them approval to go up to the state on our, with a letter of recommendation saying, hey, we approve what these guys are want to do. I personally, I don't feel comfortable with that because I don't know who these gentlemen are. I don't know what the background is. I don't have any backup material to kind of see exactly what their organization is all about. I think it should go back to committee and let's vet it and see, who these gentlemen are and what their organization is all about.
I met Mr. Schwimmer many months ago when this was in the infancy, and he was talking about the concept. He was looking for space, and they suddenly came with the deadline that they had to do this right away. But he was an impressive, successful businessman that is trying to give back by helping small businesses in the area. So if you want us to put it back to committee, I guess we can, and I don't know if
It seems like there's no transparency about this.
Let me just ask,
and there's-
Ms. Stocker, what is the time sensitivity on this? Would this be able to go before the council at the next council meeting, or is there a deadline that we would miss the application deadline?
Yeah, actually, there's a draft application that is due on, actually tomorrow by the end of the day. And then there's a 2-week period that the state will be reviewing the details of the application, and then the final one is due on April 1st. So I think we have.
But when is the letter of support needed by this council?
By the April 1st date.
By April 1st, okay.
You don't need a draft of the letter tomorrow.
No, I don't believe so.
So then we can.
Did you want to make a motion to table, Mr. Sims?
I have a suggestion.
Yes?
Committee.
Yes? John, Mr. Kites?
Oh, I'm sorry. It seems like this came to us last night. We all know grants, you got to move fast, but we have a planning meeting this Thursday, kind of falls in line with the whole planning concept. So I'm going to call for a vote to bring this, to go back to committee, and to the planning committee, next planning meeting.
Okay, so you want to table the motion and bring it back? Okay. Mr. Kites has made a motion to table this item and to return it to the planning committee. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, we'll send it back and it'll be on the planning committee, and we'll have it at the next council meeting.
It'll be on Thursday, Liz. Can you make it?
Thank you.
You may make it.
Well, I was gonna say, why don't we
I make the motion to
put in that she make sure that
Yes,
these
please.
individuals, here so we can
I
have.
make a motion to adjourn.
Adjourned.